Putin's report card from middle school. We also found out he's funding the war with Ukraine. And we know the reason that he has a distinctive walk is related to his days at the KGB. Number 10. The reason he hides his daughters. There is a sinister reason Putin hides his daughters and has never been seen in public with them. It's true. The Russian president has 2 daughters, but only a few people know what they look like. In a 2017 interview, Vladimir Putin declared that his daughters are not into politics like their father. Instead, they work in politics and education. They are both in their mid-30s, and rare interviews with them show us what they look like. The older daughter, Maria Putina, who also goes by the name of Maria Vontsova, is a pediatric endocrinologist. The younger daughter, Katerina Tikhonova, works in education. She has been the head of a $1.7 billion project aimed at creating a sports center at Moscow State University. And even though Putin claims that they are not in politics, the fact that she was part of the Council for the Development of Physical Culture and Mass Sports in Russia tells us otherwise. But the bad part is yet to come. You see, it's generally believed that Vladimir Putin uses his daughters and wife to hide his true wealth. In other words, these 2 girls own land and wealth that is indirectly tied to Putin. Speaking of Putin's family, number 9. Putin's hidden wife. Lyudmila Putina is the former wife of President Vladimir Putin. She met Vladimir Putin in Leningrad when attending a concert by Arkady Reagan. At the time, she was working as a flight attendant at Aeroflot, but after marrying Vladimir Putin in 1983, their luck began to change quickly. She began teaching German, her college major, at the Leningrad State University, and then she founded CDIC, or the Center for the Development of Interpersonal Communications. The company generates millions of dollars every year and is located in the Volkansky House. Why is this important? Because this is the house that belonged to Leo Tolstoy's grandfather. It was considered a Russian cultural heritage site, but neither that nor the protests stopped Lyudmila from changing it into a 4-story headquarters for CDIC. Now, she rents the space and generates $3 to $4 million annually. She's also believed to have ties to Putin's dirty wealth. Speaking of which, number 8. Putin's wealth. The Russian Federation would like us to believe that Putin earns $120,000 per year, has an 850 square foot, 80 square meters apartment, and 2 cars that he drives to work. But the reality is quite different. Some say that Putin is the richest person in the world, with a net worth exceeding $200 billion. Most of that comes from smashing that like button just like you should if you haven't done so already. But no, in all seriousness, that wealth comes from his oligarch friends. So here's an outline of how this happens. You see, Putin, through his political power, will give government contracts to Russian billionaires to extract resources from Russian soil. For example, copper mines. These billionaires agree to pay him up to 50% of the profits the mines generate and keep the other half for themselves. Number 7. His palace. Located right on the shore of the Black Sea, this marvelous palace is the epitome of Putin's wealth. Even though the owner is unknown, speculations say that Vladimir Putin is the man behind this marvelous mansion. It has its very own church, tea house, and an amphitheater in the open. Oh, and there's also an underground hockey rink. No one is allowed to visit this mansion since it's a no-fly and no-boat zone. All of this is speculative, but there are reasons to think Putin is the owner of this secretive villa. Number 6. His KGB walking style. A lot of people have been wondering why Putin's right arm stays fixed down, while his left arm swings freely by his side. We've seen him fight in judo tournaments, so we know that he has no problem with his right arm. But that only raises more questions than it answers. The explanation is the gunslinger's gait. Since Putin was part of the KGB from 1975 until 1991, and there, they were trained to walk with the gunslinger's gait. In a KGB Alpha Team training manual, it stated, "It is absolutely necessary to keep your weapon against the chest or in the right hand. Moving forward should be done with one side, usually the left, turned somewhat in the direction of the movement. You should crouch to stay concealed, lean the body forward slightly, and keep the knees bent." Number 5. How he handles corruption. When it comes to handling corruption, no other president does it like him. Instead of letting government agencies deal with faulty government organizations, Putin goes there himself and threatens to fire all of them. Rich oligarch, high-ranking officials, and company leaders all keep their heads down and listen. Number 4. Putin's secret to political success. Did you know that Putin's political party, United Russia, holds 325 seats out of the 450 in the Russian Federal Assembly? Well, he does this by smashing that subscribe button just like you should if you haven't done so already. But no, seriously now, Putin does this by framing elections, but he also does it by buying out political adversaries. One such example is Mikhail Prokhorov. He has a net worth of $9 billion, thanks to a copper mine Putin, we meant to say the Russian government gave him. Later, he ran for president and lost to, you guessed it, Vladimir Putin. Number 3. His high school grades. Even though he's the leader of one of the most powerful countries in the world, he wasn't a straight-A student like some might have thought. He wasn't even close. We found a report card from Vladimir Putin's last high school year. The grades are numbered, and we found out that the lowest passing grade was a 3. The number 4 means good, and 5 translated to excellent or an A student. Putin had 5s or A's in only 3 subjects: world history, biology, and German language. Therefore, his GPA was 3.9 out of 5, which means he was a good student. He got 3s in chemistry, physics, algebra, and geometry, and the rest were 4s or B's. This includes Russian language, USSR history, literature, military training, crafts, and of course, fitness. But we always thought a guy who rode horses, swam, and had a black belt in judo would get an A in fitness. Number 2. His intimidation tactics. By now, pretty much everyone knows that Putin likes to use his power to intimidate people. At one point, he even scared German Chancellor Angela Merkel. At the start of his political career, the Russian president met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, but he made sure his staff found something about Angela he could use to intimidate her. They found out that Merkel had a phobia of dogs. So what did he do? He brought his very own dog into the room. You can see the German chancellor is very reserved and doesn't touch the dog. But she knows she has to keep smiling for the cameras. In reality, she was horrified by Putin's pet. Number 1. How Putin was funding the war. We know that Russia has spent a lot of money on the war in Ukraine. In 2022 alone, the government was supposed to spend only 3.5 trillion rubles, which is the equivalent of $45.4 billion. However, it's believed that the Russian government exceeded that expenditure by September 2022. This meant that for the first time since the fall of the USSR, Russia would spend more than 5% of its budget on the military. And how are they paying for all of this? Simple. They are exporting oil and gas to countries that can't live without it. Even though Western countries stopped all trade with Russia, they couldn't stop the import of cheap oil and gas. Even though Russia's economy suffered from inflation, they imported most of their good from China and didn't even bother including the West in the deals. Despite the fall in overall trade with Russia and its Western allies, Russian exports to Western countries increased over the year. And as you might have already guessed it, the main export was oil and gas. Despite freezing Russia's overseas bank accounts, the fund Russia received from the sale of oil and gas was more than enough to offset the cost of the war, or as Putin calls it, a military operation. See you in the next video.